You're joining us today to talk about childhood experiences as well as hidden guilt and hidden shame. So, I guess my first question too is when it comes to childhood experiences, what does it mean to have hidden guilt or hidden shame?
That's a great question. I would say hidden guilt and hidden shame is just feeling, I would say, small or insignificant due to challenges or mistakes that we've made that we feel, I think, at the time that probably no one else has had those similar missteps. And by not maybe sharing those experiences, then the weight of that guilt and shame just continues to grow and continues to feel heavy and then ultimately impact, our growth as a person and maybe our growth in relationships and kind of what we feel is possible, for our future. So I think that in general, it just can really keep us from moving forward in the way that we are meant to be.
How did you end up getting involved in this area and why?
In coaching, that's a great question. Due to my husband's job that we talked about before, I kind of became a jack of all trades, master of none. So I did a little bit of office work in a church, elementary school, kind of just admin, trying to figure out my purpose because I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I didn't have a hard and fast trek to going to school and getting a certain degree and that type of thing. But in my 30s, after the kids kind of started to, be more self-sufficient, I was really excited about healthcare, and I was starting to explore opportunities in healthcare that could help me be a part of their wellness in a particular way. So I decided to go to school at 35 and get my degree in radiology technologist. And that was an opportunity. And this was actually kind of about 3 or 4 years after I started to do some more personal work around that guilt and shame that you referred to, and kind of starting to dig out from under that heaviness a little bit and starting to feel like I had the confidence to pursue other things. And so healthcare had kind of always been on my radar, but just didn't really feel like I was in a position to move that direction. So when kind of life and myself and all the things kind of, intersected at the right time, I finished my career there, and then we moved to Charlotte, and I started working with women in breast health care with their screening mammograms, diagnostic procedures, transitioned into those people that, have breast cancer diagnoses and biopsies and those types of things. So I was there for 15 years, was able to train and provide some leadership, as I grew in that career, and I loved it. And then I started feeling kind of a calling, or just that my purpose, was complete, if you will. Like I still wanted to be a part of helping others, but I wanted to kind of pursue or explore what else that could look like. So I met a few people that were into coaching and wellness, and I've been a spin instructor for the last 10, 15 years. And really enjoy that aspect of pushing yourself physically, mentally, kind of how that all intersects together. So then personal coaching just kind of seemed like a logical next step to continue to be able to create that impact for others, be able to share my experiences and what I gleaned from that in the hopes of also feeling, that others could be empowered to share their story without some of that guilt and shame, or just encouraging them that that doesn't have to stay that way. And then just creating another opportunity to work with others in a positive way. So it's been amazing, and meeting people like yourself and kind of exploring, not just coaching, yay, and helping others, but then on a bigger capacity, what could that look like? Sharing your story, in a podcast situation where there might be people that I would never actually physically meet or, cross paths with, but an opportunity to still provide hopefully hope and encouragement and, an opportunity for growth.
I know some of the women that I work with, they suffer from shame more so than guilt, and I explain why. So the shame they suffer from is that growing up, many of them had a difficult childhood, and because of their generation, like they're 50 and older,
Mhm.
mental health really wasn't something that a lot of people talked about, right?
Right, right.
So it was more you keep it inside your household because you didn't want to shame the
Yeah.
family, right? Like that was a big thing. Still to a degree this day. So they had to deal with that even though they didn't have the best of experiences. And then when they got into their adult relationships, a lot of the relationships ended up failing and they felt the guilt of that because in their mind, they're like, what they shared with me, maybe I'm not good enough for a successful relationship,
Mm,
not knowing that if you trace it back to their childhood, they felt the
yeah.
same way, but they kept it inside. So when you're coaching some of the people that you're coaching, what do you think are some of the obstacles that are in the way of people finding success in the different types of relationships in their life?
Mm. One of the best things that I took a chance on was enrolling in a certification, and it's called Primal Question Certification, and it's based on a book from Mike Foster. And it just kind of talks about our needs. And again, some of those things that, depending on our family dynamics and maybe women specifically, like we weren't really encouraged to have needs. Maybe that was a sign of a weakness or a sign of, just not being mindful of what other people needed. And so, again, kind of just feeling like you weren't able to share or to be, um, I would say, mm, confident or encouraged to share those things. So, what has really helped me, and I similarly to the ladies that you had referred to, just not really knowing how to process that, how when I was younger, my mom had several divorces and marriages. And so it was kind of I would say unstable. I mean, our mom loved us and she would do anything for us, but in her, I feel seeking of security and safety. When she didn't feel safe or secure in a relationship, she maybe didn't know how to navigate that. Maybe there were other factors, but then instead of kind of trying to work on that and stay the course, it was an opportunity to, move on from that relationship and maybe try again. So she was continue, I think, to try to find herself and just did, the best that she could. She was a single mom a lot. She had a lot of weight on her shoulders. She had sometimes two jobs. And so I think as, in the home, we just were managing the next thing. And again, didn't really feel like we should be sharing, our challenges because there was enough challenges, going on without that. So not wanting to be a burden or not wanting to add weight to the situation. Um, but as a result of those experiences, which on the primal question that I referred to, there's a quiz on my website that you can take, but it goes through our highest emotional need. So when you take the quiz and it basically boils down to, is your highest emotional need, am I safe? Am I secure? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I successful? Am I good enough? Or do I have a purpose? So it helps to kind of, I want to say narrow down because of course we all have a little piece of that, but really based on our childhood and the way that we connected the dots as kids. So, and sometimes it's not even maybe a parent child relationship. Maybe it was an extended family member, that did something or that you were a part of that created kind of that need. And go forward, you're basically trying to get that need met, whatever that looks like. So for me, in learning more about myself, taking the quiz, getting, some coaching around that, mine was, am I wanted? And a lot of people that kind of have gone through, maybe divorces or unstable home life, am I wanted or am I loved is very prominent. Now, likely, like if there was maybe a situation or a home life where, the making ends meet was challenging, or, they didn't feel safe, with a particular parent or family member, then they might tend to feel that if their safety or security is at jeopardy, then they're going to fight and do whatever they need to do to feel that safety and security. So, for example, and my mom has taken this and she's very supportive. Hers is, am I safe? So she would definitely, I think, agree that when she did not feel safe, she would try to make those situations different. That sometimes did lead to a divorce or to a marriage, a different marriage seeking that need. So for me, as I continued to grow up and went into like junior high, the need for wanting came in the way of like boyfriend girlfriend relationships. So I would to your point with your the ladies that you talked about, like I would never, I was always in a relationship. So I would not like leave a relationship or like break up with a boyfriend until I had another one in the wings. Like I just did not know how to be alone. Like that's petrified me. And unfortunately, though, because of the am I wanted, like if I never really felt like people liked me for me. Like I felt like there had to be something that I could had to give to the situation, whether it be physically or support or, being available 24/7. Like it's hard to know, it kind of just depends on what, the situation was at the time. But I never really felt like maybe people were interested or loved me for me, that there was always something more I had to bring to the situation. So kind of in relation to that, I got in trouble in junior high. Shocking that, the parents, when you're a kid, you're like, I got this. And then, as adults, they look and you're like, wait a minute, these things are not adding up. Like you are not going to track practice. You're going to hang out with some boy after school. So their I don't know, solution was to take me to counseling, which I was like, heck no. And then the second solution was to go to church. And I figured, well, this is going to be kind of short lived. Like, we're just going to go a couple weeks and then dust is going to settle and then we're just going to move on and do something else. But we kept going. So at that point, I'm like, all right, I guess I need to get some, invest in this situation and meet some new people. So I started going to a high school youth group. And honestly, at that moment, that was when I was probably eighth, ninth grade. For the first time, I saw that there were a group of people that just liked me for me. There was nothing I had to give. There was nothing they were asking for. There was no like, exchange that I had been used to. And I wanted that. Like they just seemed content and confident and, just peaceful. And thankfully, it's funny how when we have those, like I was in trouble technically, and that was their solution, but it was probably meant to be, the thing that was able to kind of turn a little bit of the trajectory how I was headed towards a lot of those unhealthy habits. So that was amazing. And I, as a result of that, decided to go to a Christian high school, which I was excited about. It was my choice. Most of the other people there, that was just kind of the way that they, grew up. So I don't know if they, felt like it was as much of a gift as, I was feeling at the time. So it was like a new door opened. And so in a way, not that I still didn't value being wanted, but I could see what it looked like to have healthier relationships and to have people that really, believed and loved you for you. Um, so as I continued on, we all make mistakes as a result, even though we have new knowledge and a new perspective. Unfortunately, growth isn't linear, which I wish it was. So sometimes we're like going, and then other times it just gets all scrambled up and you're just like, oh my gosh, what happened? Okay, we got to start over. So in my high school year, there was just some life things that happened, and it really put me in kind of a spiral of not feeling that wantedness, not feeling included, not feeling like I knew where my place was. And I reverted back to those old habits of physical touch and, finding love or thinking that it was love to help me kind of get regrounded again. And as a result, I had an unplanned pregnancy. And at the school that I went to, because of its environment, there were upperclassmen ahead of me that had that same experience. And once they were honest and upfront about it with their staff, they were asked to leave. So that's where, again, kind of the shame, of making a mistake and not feeling like you were supported in what that looks like. How can we help you? How can we encourage you? Like, what are the options? Like, what, can we do for you? It was very much known that you lock it down, like you don't say anything, you just keep stepping, put on a face, and you don't be honest, you don't be authentic, because if you do, you're going to be rejected. So that was really the message that I had gotten at that time. And so I definitely didn't say anything. I was like 2 months away from graduating, um, kept it under wraps, graduated. Then, the truth came out. And it was the shame and the guilt, I think, was just from disappointing not myself, but just those that knew I could do better, like grandparents, and parents. My parents were divorced, but my dad was very much a um, appearance person, which he is still now. And again, I'm not faulting him for it, but you acted a part, you looked a part, you did certain things to be accepted and loved and wanted, and that was not one of them. So, so all that to say is that I was devastated. And, of course, I think as we all maybe make missteps that are more public, because I feel again, like even though I had a relationship with God, I had kind of drifted away. And I know, mentally they say, okay, well, you're forgiven. Like it's, we all fail and tomorrow's a new day and all those things, but I didn't feel like it was really something that I deserved. And so that felt heavy. And then 3 months later, I had a miscarriage. So that was another just time of confusion where it's like, okay, I obviously sought love in the wrong places, had a pregnancy, let down, like I felt like everybody I knew and loved. And now I have a miscarriage and I was like, I'm alone. Like I don't have, anything to show for. Like, what is this lesson about? And because of the experience that I had in terms of like not sharing your truth, not being upfront and honest about what was going on, and just keeping it quiet, because if you do tell people, you're not going to be loved and accepted. So I continued going forward for really like the next 10 years. I mean, I did get married, and he was definitely someone I wouldn't have normally chosen. And that was, again, probably God's design, because we're still married and it's going to be 35 years in August. So, yay. And I'm sure I put him through the ringer to like test that, am I really wanted? But, it was definitely a good choice. And other than that, besides him and like my close family, like it was not anything that I could really feel like I could share with even new friends. And so I just kept kind of small for those 10 years. And I was who I could be around the people that I enjoyed spending time with, but they didn't really know me. And I really, to be honest, didn't let them in. And didn't want to show my whole self because I was afraid of rejection and what that would look like. And it was just easier and safer to just kind of be up here rather than, going deeper in the relationships that I had, to risk to not have the rejection piece happen. So about 10 years down the road, there was a couple of girlfriends that I felt safe enough to share. And honestly, when I did, and their reaction was supportive and encouraging and, empathetic, and they weren't like, oh my gosh, like, I do not want to see you ever again, shut the door. The response was amazing, and it was unexpected, honestly, because I was kind of prepared for it to go either way. And then of course, as a result, they shared some things that were hard, for them in the past. And so it really actually opened up not just me to share and be more authentic, but then for them to share in a way that maybe they wouldn't have felt comfortable at, before that time, to really create a deeper connection and a deeper friendship and get to know each other at a whole new level. So after that experience, it gave me the courage to, again, slowly but surely share more about myself. It definitely, for those of us that have gone through those experiences, make you, I feel like, a lot less judgmental and a lot more empathetic towards the world as a whole, because that like kind of one wrong decision can change your life. And that, that's being human. And if we can learn from it and grow from it and do better and be that, an example, or at least an opportunity for encouragement for someone else, then it was worth it. There was a purpose behind it, for the most part, even though we may not be able to know that for, again, like me, years later, that now at almost 55, I could use my experiences to share with others that, it's heavy, and shame and guilt and all those things that we carry, especially as women, can feel just suffocating. But by sharing with others and starting to have those honest conversations, um, you just feel lighter, you feel more connected. The opportunities for growth start to appear, where things that you maybe didn't feel that you were able to do or worth doing become new opportunities. So it's really just, I would encourage anyone to open up and just be I don't know, just be open, to sharing and to seeing where that could lead.
As you look back on what you described from when you were going through all of that and you had the pregnancy and then later on you also had the miscarriage, as you look back with, let's say, reflective lenses, right?
Mhm.
Um, how difficult of a journey was that for you?
Mm. It was very difficult. It was very difficult. I think, it was everything from I'd rather not live, because you just see, what's ahead. Like, you just know that you're disappointing. Like, what if I just go away? Like, what if, all these things don't have to play out, and I can just remove myself from it. There, or other people, well-meaning, trying to encourage adoption, which I felt like if I was going to go through with the pregnancy, that I wanted to keep the baby. Also discussions around what it would look like to not have the child. And I felt strongly that I didn't think I could do that either. And again, everyone has their choices and their reasons, but just knowing my heart, I just felt like that wasn't an option. And so I think through all the, kind of thinking about all the scenarios and the what ifs, even though it would have been very challenging. And I know there's so many, women that are able to be single parents at a young age and to make it work and have the support of family and friends to kind of build a community around them. So I was ready to embrace that, and honestly probably marry the person, that was the father, because, we were engaged, and kind of were headed down that road. And I don't know if it probably wouldn't have lasted, but it would have just kind of been the next expected thing to do. So it was a big, 2 months of scramble of just like, what do I want to do? What's expected? What should I do? What are the options? Kind of all of that up and down and up and down. And then ultimately, to have it happen the way that it did, which was definitely not one of the options that I had considered. And then kind of figuring out like what was all of that about, like why? Just a lot of whys and a lot of questions that didn't get answered for a really long time.
I asked that because I spoke to someone who had a similar situation. And when she fell into, I don't want to call it a trap, but when she fell into a situation where she was seeking out like physical touch and that type of intimacy
Yeah,
from men in that situation with opposite sex,
yeah.
she was going through counseling as well. But she was so deep in it, Tonya, that after counsel, like towards the end of counseling, she would be on her phone setting up one night stands. So
Mm-hmm.
as soon as she finished counseling, she had someone that was waiting in the parking lot, that had someone down the street. Like she was literally doing it in different cars. And when reality hit for her
Mm-hmm.
was when she realized in her life that she felt powerless.
Mm-hmm.
And she felt powerless in the sense that I don't have control over my urges, which is resulting in me not having control over my body. And because I don't have control over my body and my urges, I'm allowing people to disrespect me in ways that I wouldn't even imagine that I would allow.
Right.
Right. So when she realized that, it was literally like, I got to change. Like, some
Mm-hmm.
people, it's gradual. Like when you're trying to
Yeah.
lose weight, it's a gradual
Yes.
thing, right?
Right.
Like, but
Right.
I always find that when it's intimacy involved or sexual in
Yeah.
nature, it
Yeah.
seems to be like you hit rock bottom. It's like a splat. You just hit the ground and you're like,
Yeah.
I gotta figure, like a cartoon, right? It's like you
Yeah.
just, right, hit the
Exactly. You're
ground
right.
and you're flat, right?
Yes.
And she shared this. and she was almost in tears because, similar to you, she found someone afterwards that loved her in the way that she always wanted to be loved, that treated her. And she said the same thing. She's like, I probably put him through the most difficult of times. And unfortunately, I probably treated him worse than those
Mhm.
people who were treating me like I was nothing.
Mm.
Right. So when you in this coaching, when you're working with, let's say, women, for example, do you find that maybe some of them have guilt and shame in that because when they look at their new partners, they feel that, okay, eventually I'm probably going to have this conversation, but I feel a little bit of shame because of my past, or a little bit of guilt because of my past?
Sure. Yes, there definitely have been clients that have, struggled with that same situation. Think, it's things like a tree. So like, the branches are the behaviors. And, to that example, like if we just say, well, just stop doing it. I mean, that's, okay, you could maybe stop for like, I don't know, however, but then eventually the reason that you started that behavior is still there. So, it's kind of like stop eating, you know, cake. I don't know, like, but maybe we want to eat cake, And so the behaviors in terms of like coaching or problem solving, I feel like a lot of people and culture and even some of the relationships that I see now with that they have like other couple relationships or friends, they're just like, well, if only I could stop, like you said, like, having relationships with the wrong people or not eating the sweets or not gambling or the behavior. But if and then there's feelings and emotions that of course are attached to those behaviors, like you said. But then really thinking about the roots. So as much as we want to change the things that we are maybe doing or that might be harmful to ourselves or things that we just feel are kind of our default, but really digging deep and getting to the roots and getting to the how we even got to that point, like what in our growing up kind of led us to feel that that was the most important thing. And when we didn't feel that, what results? And so a lot of times being able to come from that place ultimately is the goal is that of that place of I am wanted, like you said, and knowing that you are, even if you don't feel it, and kind of knowing more about that kind of helps you to keep from that scramble of am I wanted? So having more of a question of truth rather than like a question of like, am I am I worthy? Am I um enough? I would say. So really the biggest thing that I've found that's been helpful is to look at the roots and to figure out where it originated and then kind of going, from their story from there. And even as a married, person, I mean, obviously there's situations and it doesn't have to be in a relationship, but like maybe in a workplace or in social settings that, if it's easier to be a chameleon or to kind of meet, where is your sweet spot to make sure that you're included in that way. And so it's still, if I don't get a yes in that environment, like let's say my work environment when I was working, or in a social setting, I teach spin. Like if I get the vibe that I'm not wanted, or then I start to pull back, and I start to um, just not engage and not put my best self forward. So I think that there's just some things that we all do in our scramble or in our, just search, whatever you want to call it, that we have those default behaviors. And if we can figure out why we want to default to that and then speak truth into it and realize that it's happening, I think that's half the battle. Rather than being reactive in some of our choices and situations, being, more proactive towards really knowing what that truth is and not just operating out of just fear.
Who then do you think is responsible for understanding why that's happening when someone is pulling back based on a behavior that they're receiving? The person who's pulling back or the person who's doing the behavior?
Hmm. I would say, so I think as if we know ourselves, we can't control anyone else, or understand why they're doing what they're doing. So I would say personally, just knowing how you operate and how you can, unwind the pull the thread that can kind of bring you to that more that self-awareness. can be impactful because, yeah, you can't control what else other people can do or think or say or read into, maybe things that we do. So I would say definitely starting with ourselves and understanding and learning about ourselves. And then we can share with others. So, like, for example, with my husband, he has been dealing with chronic pain now for like 2 or 3 years. And it's been, as you are married throughout several, you have lots of ebbs and flows. And so that's kind of our, reality right now. And in doing the primal question and kind of being a coach and kind of, then you're like, oh, I'm going to give this to my kids and to my husband. And like, let's see how they operate. And really more so not to find fault, but so I can breathe into those areas for them to encourage them. And then when they do, maybe, I don't know, act crazy, then I'll have a better idea why. So in his example, like he definitely values safety and security. So if he's doing something that I know is coming from a place of him not feeling safe or secure, then how can I speak into that and encourage that and help reduce that inadequacy that he's feeling? So again, it's not that it's on me to fix, but if I can see that it's coming from his place of not feeling that safety or security and being able to hopefully encourage that in a different way, then it has diffused a lot of potential heated discussions, where you're just like, okay, why are you doing this? And why did you say this? And all these other things. And not to say that you still don't need to have maybe hard conversations, but it's just to create a better understanding about what is important to that person and how you can encourage them and support them rather than be part of the, I don't want to say the problem, but part of the things that they're feeling away. So for example, like if he is valuing safety and security, and then he's doing something, and then instead of trying to reinforce those feelings, I'm start to withdraw, and then I'm quieter, and then I start pulling back. And so then I'm ultimately fueling his need for safety and security that isn't being met, and then the distance just keeps getting further and further apart. So I think just especially in a marriage relationship or just a personal relationship, knowing how those people around you, what needs mean the most to them, help you to be able to support and encourage them really in both ways. So when they're operating at their maximum, you're like, heck yeah. Or when you see them kind of starting to pull back or starting to create behaviors that are coming from a place of insecurity, then you're able to speak in, to that and encourage them in that way rather than seeing it as it is kind of a deflection of you or something that you're doing or not doing, that it's really where they are in their day or their thought process, and gaining more understanding around that.
And my answer is similar. And the reason why I asked that question is sometimes, and actually before I say this, do you mostly deal with men or women or both?
More women, I would say.
More women. Okay. So the reason why I asked that question as well is there's sometimes you have like a group of men, they're
Sure.
talking to themselves. Then you have a group of women, they're talking to
Hmm.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
They don't talk to each other, not
Right.
knowing that they have similar complaints about each other, right? But they don't ever
Exactly.
speak
Yeah.
to each other. So the reason I asked that question was to get that understanding because from my perspective as a man is that I'm very straightforward and I find that most coaches are, whether they're male or female. But then when you
Mhm.
go into the general population, you find maybe more men are straightforward, or men or women are more gentle with it, and so on and so forth, right?
Sure.
So I agree that the person who's feeling the insecurity or the emotions that they're feeling, whatever it
Hmm.
is that they're feeling,
Yeah.
it is their responsibility to understand it and communicate what they're feeling to the person that they're with.
Right.
Now, once that person has that information, now they have a conscious choice. Either they could
Hmm.
continue doing what's causing that behavior, sorry, that reaction in their partner, or
Right.
they can stop doing it, right?
Yeah.
What I find sometimes is that it gets communicated. So now the next time it's going to happen, because unfortunately it does happen at least one more time,
Right. Exactly.
right? Right?
Yes.
You have the person who's made aware now, their only true choice is to try to offer a real apology where there's acknowledgement, there's remorse, and there's amends and so on. And the
Mhm.
person who's feeling their way has to be understanding that this person is still trying,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But I think what happens is that the person who's going through it, depending on the origins of that pain,
Mhm. Sure.
they could feel shame because maybe they didn't ever get to express it,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And
Mhm.
then the other person is now they've hurt the person that they love, and they feel guilty because they're like, okay, I'm continuing to damage this person. Like my
Right.
behavior is not matching my words,
Right.
right? So I share that just so people can understand that it shouldn't be on one and done. Like when you read on
Mhm.
the internet, right? Girl, leave him. Boy,
Yes,
leave him,
exactly.
right?
Right, right.
It's like they're just waiting. Like they'll stare at you, Tana. They're like, just girl, please
Yep,
give
yep.
me a reason to leave, right? Because they probably already have someone that's waiting. Let's be honest, right? Or maybe they're tired of the relationship, but they know the person is still good enough.
Yeah.
But there's that one thing that they need. Do you find then, since you primarily work with women,
Mhm.
that they maybe struggle to understand their responsibility
Mm.
when it comes to the relationship that they're in outside of what society and culture may be telling
Yes, absolutely. I to your point, like they're like if he should know what I like, or he should know that I need XYZ. So you're absolutely right. And sometimes it's a daily check in, that it takes time. And eventually, I think you kind of start to learn. But men, you're right. Like they're just kind of, I don't say surface, but it's like, just tell me, what do you want? What do you like? Give me a picture of the thing for Christmas, whatever it is. But then as women, emotional and wanting to feel like we should be, known and shouldn't have to explain it every single time, definitely is a lot of back and forth in terms of what that really looks like and what the expectation should be. So I agree with just continuing the communication. And I wish that it was one and done because just think how much easier all of our lives would be in lots of different areas. But just giving each other grace and continuing to make that time for connection and communication. And yeah, it's a process. And if there's someone else, in the wings or out there and the grass, always looks greener, and they have their idiosyncrasies and their hangups, and it's not going to be easier. It might be different, but ultimately it won't be easier when those hard conversations, those challenges start to come, and the honeymoon phase is over, and you start to settle into life. So I feel like unless there's um, you know a situation where someone's not safe, but that they're both willing, to learn and to try and to continue to communicate and figure out what that looks like, that it's worth pursuing. It's worth digging in and doing the hard work and, um, yeah, and not giving up.
Yeah, I always tell people that will listen that the mask will always fall,
Hmm.
right? Like how ugly are you underneath it? Because we can pretend a couple months, maybe a
Sure.
year,
Sure.
right? But
Yes.
it would always fall. And I remember I shared this with a girl I used to date, and we were having our issues. And I told her here's the thing about issues, what I explained to her. I was like, I have my issues, you have your issues, we all have our issues, right?
Hmm.
But no matter what happens and who we're with, you still have to be with yourself. So if you're a bad person, unforgiving, you're just a mess, right? You still have to live with you. The other person who is moving away, they're going to be okay because they don't
Yeah.
have all of that, right? So you're just taking that mess from one person to the next. So to the people out there who are thinking that, well, I'm just going to replace this person, you can't replace yourself,
Right. 100%.
right? So
Yeah.
how important do you think the work is internally now to the person to make sure that they're doing it?
Hmm. Life changing. So important. And ah, yes, because you can't be your best for someone else until you're your best, for yourself. And again, it doesn't mean that we're perfect, and it doesn't mean that we even know all the answers, but just continuing to learn and continuing to grow and to be open to different ways of thinking and to different perspectives. And like you said, not kind of putting your stake in the sand and being like, it's, this is how it is, but to be open to there's lots of ways to tackle, a goal or a conversation, and if it's not working, then try it a different way. I think again, sometimes we feel like there's one way to a solution, and there's so many other ways. And maybe that is when you talk to, a coach or a friend or, um, you know, a counselor or whoever, to be like, okay, these are the things I've tried. This is what's not working. And maybe they would have a different, thought process. So 100% digging in and doing the work, which is so hard. And I am, they kind of say we're not human beings, but like human becoming. Because I think until we die, I feel like there's always opportunities to learn and grow. And yes, there is a lot of negativity in the world, and there's a lot of unrest, and there's a lot of unknowns. But if you can focus in on what you can control, can you be the light, for others in your life? Can you share your smile? Can you share your encouragement? Can you, share your story, to provide hope for other people? And just seeing for those opportunities of good and growth, because they're there. But I think as we, are kind of products of who we surround ourselves with. So if we're in a community, even if they're the best of friends, and be like, like you said, like, girl, you should dump him and go do this. And, like you said, like, you're not happy here at the beach. It's because you need to be in the mountains. And it's like, well, you can go to the mountains, or you can go to, Maui, but you're still you. And the things that you carry with you are going to come. And so I feel like you're right. You can't outrun it. And if you don't uh, look internally and start to kind of do that hard work, you're going to continue finding other ways to find healing that aren't going to be in your best interest. Whether it be, like you said, relationships or distractions, I would say, like even the phone. You know what I mean? Like social media. And it doesn't even have to be life changing, but there's so many things that we can become distracted by because it's easier. And it's like I should do this, but I'm really gonna do this instead. And I fight with that every single day. Like the benefit of kind of digging out from some of that shame and guilt and heaviness was, I've never really been an athlete. I didn't think I could, do hard things. I didn't have a desire to like push the limits physically, but that was something that I started to explore, that led me to teach spin. And now I'm super passionate about pushing yourself physically can definitely increase your mental capacity, can give you, just better mental health, like better, just all of that. So I feel like it's all encompassing, but it's still not easy. Like I signed up, I don't even know why. Like we do things good or bad. You look back, you're like, what was I thinking? But I've ran a couple half marathons. Again, I'm not a runner. Like I like to push the limits, but running really isn't my favorite thing to do. But in November, I felt like I need a challenge, because I feel like, again, if I can push through a challenge and do something a little bit out of my comfort zone that scares me and accomplish it, or even if I try and fail, at least I tried, then that helps me mentally to become stronger and to, to be, I don't know, just more confident. So long story long is that there's a half marathon in Maine that I am signed up to do with a friend at the beginning of May. We got like 5 weeks, and I've been dragging my feet. And every month, this last couple months, I'm like, I should really be running. I should really be doing more. Like, I don't want to. I had distractions. I had meetings. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do it in the morning, and then nope, did do it all day long. Oh well, maybe tomorrow. But today I got my behind out of bed and I ran 7 miles, and it just made it happen. So all that to say is that even if it's a relationship or a physical challenge or a work, situation where it's kind of like staying in a situation where you're like, well, it's better because it's the devil I know than the devil I don't. You know what I mean? Like I know what to expect, whether it's healthy, not healthy, makes me crabby, whatever it is, but it's what I know. And so I'm going to stay with that because it's safe rather than pushing. So I just had this bad attitude about the half marathon. And I'm like, I shouldn't, I don't want to, blah, blah, blah. And I woke up this morning, I'm like, you know what? Like, don't change the goal, let the goal change you. And so I said, you know what? I mapped it out, and it's going to happen. And if I don't know, and if I get there that day and I start and I am not able to finish for whatever reason, at least I know I tried. So I feel like, no matter what it is, we can find a million reasons why it's safer not to push forward, or why we just don't want to. But we have to push forward, you know? And if you need that encouragement, that's where it's important to reach out to someone. Like if you know yourself and you're like, I know that I'm going to poop out on myself because I just do, then share with someone that's safe, you know, and be like, I need your encouragement. I need your accountability. Like, I need you to call me in the morning and say, get your behind out there and put your tennis shoes on and make it happen, you know, whatever that is. So it's definitely not a sign of weakness to reach out to people to say, this is my goal. And again, you don't have to shout it from the rooftops, but you know, like, this is where I'm at. I need accountability. I need some encouragement. Will you do this for me? Whether it be to have hard conversations, you know, with someone that you've been avoiding or looking for a new opportunity in the job because you're miserable at the one you have and you just know that there's something better, but you're afraid to know what, you know, to explore what that would look like. So I think there's just lots of opportunities for growth in different areas of our life. And ideally, it would be great if we had all those things happening and at 100%, but often not. Often there's like two or three that are going really great, and then something that's really tanking. And finding the energy and focus to put into those tanking parts of life can feel like a heavy lift, but it could be so helpful. Even if you just move the needle a little bit, like they say, what 1%, you know, change a day. I mean, if that's all you're looking for, just 1%, and think of what could happen in the next year if that was your goal to just move the needle 1%.
What about those who are feeling a little bit of shame because if they were to resolve or push forward, like you mentioned, the person that they will be becoming will put them in a situation that the people around them will no longer want to be around them and they may feel alone.
Yeah, that's real. And honestly, I've felt that personally, you know, with some people around me that aren't as passionate about that. And again, making that change can, I don't know, make them feel less confident or like you said, or not on board. That's a tough one. I mean, it happens all the time. And I think again, just staying true to who you are. And if those people or friends or family really love you for you and are in your corner, then they're going to support you. Um, I would don't stay small or don't, you know, stay unchallenged or not accomplish your goal or move forward or try to, you know, get a better job or like I said, lose weight or whatever that is to make everyone else around you feel better because you will be miserable. So I know that it's hard because we feel like it's selfish for us to move forward, or if that person can't, then I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. And it's just doing the work. You know, that's again, I wish it was like an easy fix or like a one answer or a one liner that you could be like, oh, here it is. Now, boom, it's gone. But just really leaning into that discomfort. Growth is not comfortable. And if you have those friendships or those people that aren't for you, then you are meant to find new people. You know, you're meant to find people that will support and encourage you in a new way and be excited to do it. So
There's
I
a
would,
woman I'm I
yeah,
was
go
gonna
ahead.
say to your point, right? There's a woman I'm working with, and when she started to take her life in a different direction, she got a better job, she developed herself, right? She started to overcome some of her trauma.
Mhm,
She found that she had less time for the people around her when she was full blown deep in the trauma,
mhm,
right? And there's times where she would say that terrain. She's like, I haven't spent time with this person. I spent that time with this person. So I was like, and that's perfectly fine, like because you're used to it. And I asked her the question, but are you healthier, mind, body, and soul? And she's
mhm,
like, yes. I was like, the brain is a funny thing. Is
mhm.
that your brain has been conditioned to be okay with that situation because even though it wasn't the healthiest, you didn't die.
Right.
You're still right, still there. This
Exactly.
right, this new you now is like, okay, I don't know what that is. It could be
Mhm.
damaging, it could be scary, it could be a whole bunch of things, but it could be very good. And I
Yeah.
told us like, look at all that you've accomplished. You've overcome some of your issues with your parents. You've overcome some of your issues from your childhood. You've been able to find a relationship again. You found a new job.
Mhm.
All of these things you've accomplished in a year and a half. The people that you used to spend time with, what have they done while you're doing that? It's like, well, I think they're still the same. I was like, so do you want to go back to who you were
Mhm.
just to spend time with them? Or do you want to continue becoming who you've always wanted to be?
Mhm.
And then she said that I want to continue being that. I was like, it's okay to let go. It doesn't mean you hate them,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah.
It just means that they're not going to be a part of your journey going forward. And I told her the beautiful thing about growth is that those who are for the growth
Mhm.
will grow with you,
Yes. A million
right?
percent. Yes.
Exactly. Those who are not for the growth, they
Mhm.
will not grow with you. And
Right.
sometimes I wonder if it's, let's say, and this is probably going to sound stereotypical. I think men in general are probably more comfortable with
Mhm.
being alone,
Sure. Yeah.
right? Where women are
Yeah.
probably less comfortable. So sometimes they'll try to justify that, like, okay, you know what? I'm going to find something to do
Mhm.
with them. Where a man, we can be in our underwear all day long, right?
Right.
at home, right? Where women need that
Exactly.
in interaction. Like, what are your thoughts on people who struggle with leaving the old them and becoming the new them because they think that, okay, what are people going to think about me? I have the guilt, so I'm leaving them behind. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Mhm. Back to faith, as much as, we have some agency in the things that we think about, I definitely think that there's the enemy, in um, our spiritual world that is in our ear all the time and knows our weaknesses, knows where, we um, our heart for others. And like you said, if that's not coming from, God, it's not coming from someone that wants the best from you, it's coming from the enemy that is like, hey, you're doing all these things, but what if, you let's stay small, like let's, make everyone else happy, like we don't want to, you shouldn't be doing these things, and all those, just all what you explained. I mean, just that loop that happens, in our head, wanting us to go back to where we were rather than go forward. And I love that you said, be with the when you grow and you meet new people, then you're going to find those people that are going to continue to cheer you on. And what you think is like, here, those people are going to be like, oh my gosh, you're doing amazing. What if we did this? And just continue that trajectory forward. And I would say, those people that aren't interested in growing and learning, that's okay. You can love them anyway. And it's not you or that person pulling away from them, it's them pulling away from that person. So I feel like if I'm the one that's growing and learning and wants to do that, they can come along. Like I'm not inviting them, but they're the ones that either are, feeling, insecure or challenged or whatever it is by the things that I'm doing. So I guess I would just encourage that person to know that it's not something that they're doing, it's what those other people are choosing to do, because they can absolutely come on for the ride. And you can still, again, love them, encourage them from afar. I think of in terms of like an intimacy, a house where those people in your life that are on the porch. You see them, them, you kind of have an idea, and that's great. And they know enough about you to kind of be like in that, porch setting. And then there's people that you would feel comfortable to invite into like your living room. And you might share a little bit more about yourself and have them over for dinner and just create more of a connection and a friendship with them. And then there's those people that you would invite into, I would say, more sacred places, like a visual would be like your bedroom, where there's maybe a few close friends or your spouse or kids or someone that really knows your heart and knows your deepest secrets and all the ways that you work. So sometimes, and that's not always the same, like the people that are in your living room, they might need to be porch people. You might be like, you know what? Like, I love you, I appreciate you, but I need to make some room for people in my living room that are actually going to motivate me and challenge me and cheer me on. So just having a little gut check and looking at those relationships and seeing again how you don't necessarily may not want to have them, or you're not sending them a message saying, I'm going to unfriend you, but just to slowly, and I think through the course of time that kind of happens, like the people that are meant for you are going to show up, and those people are going to find other interests, or just not be as present. And I think sometimes the test of time is helpful. Like you just keep doing what you're doing, keep pushing forward, finding those things that motivate you, and try to again release the guilt, which is, it's hard, but just affirmations are good. Like if you do have a faith, like just reminding yourself that there is another, there's an enemy at play that would love to keep you small. Because if, and it's not just even towards that person, like if the enemy can keep you stuck rather than moving forward, think of how many less people you could impact, how many less people you could encourage, how many less, which would be super great, because then again, everybody's just kind of sad and miserable and feeling hopeless rather than the opposite. So I feel like rather than them thinking about just themselves, but just thinking about if they don't continue to grow and learn, the impact that they will not be able to have to those people that are looking for them to step into their lives and to make a difference. So yeah, so just keep pressing. Again, it's, if all this stuff was easy, we wouldn't be here, It's a daily, it's intentional, daily, setting yourself up with things that you need. Like I said, whether it's affirmations, maybe it's music. Like my husband, he's found that, playing music in the morning when he's getting ready helps encourage his mood. So sometimes it can be as simple as that. Maybe it's getting out and going for a walk for the first 30 minutes of your day, just to clear your mind, get in some nature, get in your right headspace before, you open your phone or watch the news, or, text with that friend that might be like, you don't need to go for, run today. Like, come on over and let's have drinks. So setting yourself up for success as much as you can make a huge difference.
I shared with someone the other day, and this is something that I live by, is that the longer you spend with unhealthy people, the more you're missing out on time with healthy people.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Because a lot of times you can't do both. And I guess for you, Tanya, as we close, if you had three wishes,
Mm.
Aladdin's lamp, genie lamp, what would you wish people knew more about when it comes to shame and guilt, and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, Three things. That one is that your past is not your present. Like the things that you have been through don't define you. They're a part of your story and they've shaped who you are. But I feel that those things have set us up to make a greater impact and to be more empathetic and to help someone that maybe was in that situation, to give them that encouragement that life isn't over, that there's still a lot of good things that can come, um, as a result. So one, that your past doesn't define your present. Two, I really think that finding how those dots were connected in childhood, with your primal question and identifying your need is huge. There are things, even in my marriage relationship, that I saw that were problematic, and it was me trying to find that wantedness that I wasn't feeling in my married relationship. And, just again, knowledge is power. So, number two, knowledge is power. Do the work, seek out people that are where you want to be, because they can help you get to that next step, whether it be relationship, job, physical, mental, whatever it is. So that's number two. Number three, I would say give yourself grace. Like we talked about before, growing, learning, overcoming the things that we have thought about ourselves or about our situation for years isn't going to happen overnight. So give yourself grace that you're going to have hard days, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not supposed to be where you are, in terms of the growth journey. To give yourself grace to have bad days, and as much as I am pro wellness, sometimes you just need to take a break, pause, and be okay with that. Like it's not a sign of weakness. I mean, we sometimes we just need that reset and that opportunity to take with ourselves and to not feel guilty for it. Again, maybe that's a female thing where, we feel like we got to be doing all the things all the time. Where I feel like men sometimes are a little more, content with pizza and a ball game and they don't feel bad about it. So, so giving yourself grace to rest and reset and to, if you have a hard day, that is just a hard day. Tomorrow's a new one.